Hello. Walter Rauschenbusch, page 186, Christianity and the Social Crisis. His subhead in this chapter, The Work of Social Reconstruction, is subservience to the state. Ideally, the state is the organization of the people for their larger common interests. Actually, all states have been organizations of some section of the people to protect their special interests against the rest. Ideally, the chief function of the state should be the maintenance of justice. Actually, the chief function of most states has been the maintenance of existing conditions, whatever they happen to be. The state is the representative of things as they are. The church is the representative of things as they ought to be. Insofar as it is loyal to this duty, it must be perpetual, but it should be in perpetual but friendly conflict with the state, pushing it on to ever higher lines of duty. Nothing better could happen to any state than to have within it a church devoted not to its own selfish corporate interests, but to the moral welfare of humanity, and nudging the reluctant state along like an enlightened pedagogue. Before Constantine, the church was, of course, unable to fulfill any such friendly office as moral monitor. After Constantine, the church was in many respects less free than it had been before. The Christian emperors considered the apparatus of the church as an important part of the machinery of the empire, and kept a firm and coercing hand on the legislative councils and the episcopal executives of the church. Their favors were even more deadly than their decrees of banishment. The leaders of the church learned to be courtiers in order to further the interests of their sees and of orthodoxy in general, and the atmosphere of courts is not healthy for any who are to champion the cause of the people in the spirit of Christ. During the Middle Ages, the landed wealth of the church made her a part of the feudal system. She was on the whole a conservative and merciful landlord, but her interest was with the landed aristocracy and the governing powers. When she antagonized the state, it was in her own interest. The Reformation did not directly remedy the dependence of the church on the state, but in some countries made the church an even more servile tool of the princes. To our own day, wherever the church leans on state protection and lives on state aid, she is expected to lend her moral support to the state to maintain existing conditions, and she does so. Both in England and Germany, for instance, the established church is a Tory, that is a conservative influence. But when she is thus allied with the powers that be, she can make no effective protest against the wrongs that be. The church, supported by the state, is in the position of the office holders appointed by the party in power. They have to support the policy of the administration, praising it when it is good and defending it when it is bad. The separation of church and state has the double advantage of removing the clerical influence from political life and the political influence from church life. It leaves the church unmuzzled to speak out if it has anything to say. It does its best when it is the party in opposition, poor but vociferous. The church as a body has been dependent on the state and therefore subservient to it. The members of the church individually have been politically disfranchised and subject to their rulers, and that has made them passive on questions of political morality. While the church lived in the hostile and heathen empire, its members had to keep aloof from public life and to find all their interests in the narrow circle of the family and the churches. Hence, so far as asceticism permitted, the ethics of the family was developed and leavened with Christian ideas. The early narrowness of interest left its record in the writings of the apostles and the early fathers and set a precedent for later times. And then he goes on to talk about that. Of course, will have to change as the church gains more power in society. I'll put a link into Jacques Ellul's comments on this period and transition. The Subversion of Christianity, as he entitled his book.